Morning heat shimmered over the asphalt yard of Fort Rendon's vehicle depot. Engines idled. Diesel smoke clung to the air. Soldiers shouted orders over the clang of tools. And then, the convoy arrived, 12 armored trucks, dust-streaked and impatient. At the front of the column stepped General Marcus Vale, chest of medals gleaming, a man used to obedience. His temper arrived a few seconds before he did. The convoy was scheduled to roll at noon. It was already 12:30. One vehicle, a communications carrier, sat dead, smoke curling from its hood. Mechanics in uniform crowded around, arguing. Wrenches clanged. Sweat ran down brows that pretended confidence. Nothing worked. From across the yard, Eli Daniels watched silently. Coveralls stained with grease, cap pulled low, he looked like part of the machinery, one of those figures people pass without seeing. He'd been contracted for civilian maintenance since his retirement. Most of the soldiers barely spoke to him. "Who signed this junker off?" the general barked. No one answered. His gaze swept the crew, stopping on the civilian with the rag in his hand. "Who?" Vale snapped. "You're the contractor, aren't you? The one they said could handle anything." "Well, handle this." The sarcasm drew laughter from the soldiers. Eli walked closer, slow, cautious. The engine coughed once, then died again. He listened, head tilted, the way a medic listens to a heartbeat. "Fuel lines pinched," he said quietly. "Might have cracked the intake when you—" Vale cut him off. "I didn't ask for excuses, mechanic. I asked for results." Another ripple of laughter. Someone muttered, "Yeah, if he even knows what he's looking at." Eli said nothing. He reached for the latch, but a sergeant blocked him with an outstretched arm. "Sir, he's civilian," the sergeant said. "Regulation says no outside tampering with command vehicles." Vale smirked. "You hear that, Daniels? Even my men don't trust you not to make it worse. Step back before you break something you can't fix." The words landed harder than the heat. Eli's jaw flexed once. Then he wiped his hands on the rag and stepped away. The general turned to his officers. "Get someone competent. I don't need amateurs slowing me down." The convoy bay echoed with laughter again. Dry, rehearsed, the kind that exists to please power. An hour later, the trucks were still parked. Someone had fetched diagnostic gear. The readings made no sense. Temperatures spiked, sensors failed, and the engine refused to start. From the shade near the tool shed, Eli kept watching. He'd seen this pattern before, a rare electronic lockout built into newer models. Most mechanics never encountered it. "Still not running?" he asked softly. The lieutenant nearest him sneered. "Didn't I tell you to keep your greasy hands off Army property?" "Just saying, sir, if the line's blocked near the—" "Enough," the officer snapped. "You've done your time wiping bolts. Leave real work to real engineers." The word engineers hung in the air like a wall. Eli nodded once and turned away, the rag twisting between his fingers. Behind him, someone joked, "Guess some people are born useless." Laughter again. By mid-afternoon, frustration curdled into panic. The general's radio screamed with updates. A VIP inspection delayed, security routes compromised. He paced beside the silent truck like a caged wolf. "Get me that useless mechanic," he barked suddenly. The same soldiers who had mocked Eli moments ago went looking for him. They found him under another vehicle, tightening a bolt with steady hands. "The general wants you," one said grudgingly. Eli wiped his palms and followed them back. Vale pointed at the disabled carrier. "You said fuel line. Prove it." Eli leaned over the engine, eyes narrowing. He traced the tubing, fingers moving with confidence that irritated everyone watching. Minutes passed. He sealed a clamp, adjusted the throttle, and motioned toward the ignition. "Try it now." The engine coughed, stuttered, and roared to life. The yard fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Eli stepped back, the rag once again hanging from his fingers. "Wasn't the fuel line," he murmured. "It was the sensor relay. You were forcing the system into lockdown." No applause. No thanks. Just the general's stare, half relief, half resentment. "You got lucky," Vale said coldly. "Don't start thinking that makes you indispensable." He turned to his men. Move out. Engines revved. Dust rose. The convoy rolled forward, leaving the mechanic standing alone in the fading light, the laughter now replaced by exhaust and silence. By evening the desert wind had turned coarse and red. The convoy stretched across the highway like a line of steel beasts rumbling toward the horizon. Radios cracked. Sunlight burned off windshields. Inside the lead vehicle, General Vale adjusted his cap, still irritated. "Remind maintenance that civilian won't be anywhere near my equipment again," he told his aide. "Last thing we need is another amateur miracle." The aide nodded, though the word miracle had been muttered with scorn. 20 minutes later, the dashboard alarms began to blink. A low hum deepened into a groan. Then silence. The entire convoy slowed, stalled, and died in sequence, one vehicle after another, metal surrendering to stillness. "Not again," Vale hissed. Soldiers poured out, shouting over one another. The desert swallowed the sound. A sandstorm built on the horizon, a yellow wall advancing. The general's staff surrounded him, their confidence melting with the heat. "Sir, systems failure across the board," the tech officer said. "Diagnostics are fried. Reboot won't take." Vale slammed his hand on the hood. "You're telling me 12 trucks go down at once and none of you can explain it?" No one answered. Wind carried dust across their boots. Then a voice came from the rear of the column. Eli Daniels. He had followed in a service pickup, as required by contract, backup support for emergencies. He climbed out slowly, wiping dust from his face. "Looks like the power relay chain burned out," he said quietly. "Same fault line I warned about earlier." The lieutenant laughed harshly. "You again? Didn't you hear the general? You're done here." Another soldier added, probably hoping to get lucky twice. Eli glanced at the convoy, engines cooling under the sun. "Luck doesn't fix machines," he said. But no one wanted to hear him. The general's patience snapped. "You think you know better than trained military engineers?" "No, sir," Eli replied. "I think I know this model better than its manual." Vale's face hardened. "You're a civilian mechanic. You fix flat tires and oil leaks. You don't lecture officers about advanced systems." He turned to his men. "If this man comes near the equipment again, remove him from the site. I'll have his contract revoked by morning." The laughter returned, louder now, released by permission. One of the younger corporals snorted, "Guess it's back to changing bus filters, old man." Eli met no one's eyes. He folded his rag and tucked it into his pocket. "I'll wait by my truck," he said softly. "When you need me." The words drew another round of mock applause. Vale waved him off. "I won't." The mechanic walked away into the rising dust. Minutes passed. Then thunder. Not from the sky, from inside the engines. A metallic crack, followed by sparks. Smoke poured from the lead vehicle's hood. The next truck back caught flame in the relay line. Panic erupted. "Kill the power." "It's dead, sir. Systems won't respond." Men scattered for fire extinguishers. One explosion sent debris across the sand. And through the chaos, the general saw the impossible. Eli Daniels running toward the fire, jacket pulled over his face, wrench in hand. He dove under the smoking chassis, sparks showering his arms. 2 soldiers tried to drag him back. He shoved them away. "Move the others, this one's grounding out." No one had time to argue. In seconds, he rerouted a loose coupling, disconnected a power lead, and jammed a metal pin into the exposed junction. The fire died with a hiss. When the smoke thinned, Eli stood, sleeve burned, face streaked with soot. The convoy was silent again, but alive, nothing else exploding. The soldiers stared at him, breathing hard. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the lieutenant who had mocked him earlier muttered, almost reluctant, How'd you know where to cut it?" Eli wiped his hands. "Because I helped design this engine 10 years ago. Before it had your badge on it." He didn't wait for the reaction. He walked toward his truck, leaving the crowd speechless behind him. The general watched him go, expression unreadable, anger fighting with something that looked suspiciously like shame. Night crept in. The convoy restarted under temporary power. Vale rode in silence, staring out the window at the flickering headlights ahead. Finally he spoke to his aide. "Find out who that man is." "Yes, sir." "Everything. Where he worked before. Why he's here." The aide hesitated. "Sir, you really think he—" "Just do it," Vale said, voice low. "Something doesn't add up." The camera, if this were film, would linger on Eli's truck following behind the convoy, its headlights steady, patient, cutting through the dust like quiet resolve. 2 days later, the general's aide, Lieutenant Marlowe, entered his tent with a folder thick enough to change everything. He stood stiffly before the general's desk. "Sir, we found records on the mechanic." Vale didn't look up from his report. "Daniels?" "Yes, sir. Eli Daniels. Former chief engineer, Tactical Vehicle Division, North Ridge Military Plant." The pen froze in Vale's hand. "Say that again." "Chief engineer, sir. He worked under the Defense Research Division 15 years ago. His name was on the original design schematics for the convoy units we're using right now." Vale leaned back slowly, disbelief flickering behind his eyes. "You're telling me the man I called useless built my trucks?" Marlowe hesitated. "Yes, sir. But there's more. He was dismissed after a budget controversy, someone took credit for his design, and when he filed a complaint, they blacklisted him." Silence. The kind that eats at a man's conscience. Vale spoke finally, low and bitter. "That would explain the way he looked at me." Outside camp, Eli sat beneath his pickup's canopy, tuning a stripped-down engine block he'd been repairing for the soldiers' auxiliary transport. His movements were precise, quiet, unhurried, the kind of patience that comes from a lifetime of being doubted. A younger soldier approached, cap in hand. "Sir, Mr. Daniels? General Vale sent me to bring you some water and food." Eli looked up, mildly surprised. "From the general himself?" The soldier nodded. And he said, "Thank you. For what happened yesterday." Eli smiled faintly. "Tell him he doesn't owe me thanks. Machines don't care about rank." The boy didn't know how to respond. He left the food beside him and walked off. When Eli was alone again, he stared out at the desert night, the soft hum of generators, the distant flicker of campfires. His reflection glinted faintly off a chrome panel. In that reflection, he saw what others never did, the man he used to be. The engineer who once stood at the top of his field, before pride and politics erased his name. The next morning, the convoy resumed. But this time, Eli rode inside the command vehicle, at the general's request. It was awkward at first. The soldiers who had mocked him yesterday avoided his gaze now. General Vale broke the silence. "I read your file." Eli didn't respond. "You were the reason this convoy was even approved for deployment. Why didn't you say that earlier?" Eli looked at him evenly. Would it have mattered? The question landed harder than any accusation. Vale said nothing. Eli continued, "You saw a mechanic. Not an engineer. Not a designer. Just a man in coveralls with grease on his hands. I've stopped trying to explain myself to people who already decided who I am." The general turned toward the window, ashamed of the truth in those words. The peace didn't last. Midway through the route, the convoy approached a narrow pass, an ambush zone. Just as the lead vehicle entered, an explosion shattered the rocks above. Gunfire erupted from the cliffs. The air filled with dust and screaming engines. Soldiers took cover, firing back. Communications jammed. The lead control unit, the one Eli had repaired, was hit by debris and went dead again. Vale barked orders, but chaos swallowed command. "Fallback formation. Protect the fuel truck." But the trucks couldn't move, systems offline again. Eli ducked under fire, crawling toward the smoking control unit. "Daniels, get back." Vale shouted. Eli yelled back, "You want this convoy moving or not?" He reached the burned panel, tearing open the metal casing. Inside, wiring hissed and sparked. He pulled a small toolkit from his belt, working fast, every motion born of muscle memory and defiance. Bullets ricocheted off nearby rocks. A soldier shielded him with a riot plate. Within minutes, the hum returned, power restored, engines flickering back to life. "Systems online," someone shouted. Eli shouted over the gunfire, "Drive!" The trucks roared forward, one by one, breaking through the choke point until the convoy cleared the pass. By the time the smoke settled, silence returned to the desert. The convoy was intact. No lives lost. Eli sat on a rock, hand bleeding, uniform torn. The general approached slowly. "Why didn't you wait for cover?" he asked. Eli shrugged. "I don't wait for permission to do what's right." Vale stood there for a long moment, helmet under his arm. Then, almost reluctantly, he said, "You saved my men twice. I owe you an apology." Eli didn't look up. "You don't owe me anything, General. Just don't call the next man useless before you know his story." Back at headquarters, the incident was logged as a critical systems failure resolved by civilian assistance. But that wasn't how word spread. Within days, stories moved through ranks and outposts. The mechanic who saved the general's convoy. The man they called useless, until he fixed the unfixable. New recruits repeated it like legend. Veterans nodded in quiet approval. And when the Defense Board reviewed the mission report, they saw something unusual: General Vale's personal addendum. Eli Daniels is to be reinstated under full recognition for his prior service and technical contribution to the Tactical Vehicle Division. Weeks later, in a ceremony under the same desert sun that once burned with mockery, the general stood before his troops. Eli stood beside him, no longer in overalls, but in a clean engineer's jacket with the military insignia stitched on the sleeve. Vale spoke simply, "A man's worth isn't measured by his title but by his truth. I forgot that." He reminded me. He turned to Eli and extended his hand. For a moment, Eli hesitated, then shook it. Later that evening, Eli walked alone toward his truck. He opened the door, slid into the seat, and sat quietly. His old badge, tarnished and bent, hung from the mirror. He looked at it, smiled faintly, and started the engine. In the distance, the general watched him leave, dust rising behind the wheels like a quiet trail of vindication. The desert base woke differently now. There was no laughter when Eli Daniels walked by. No whispers. Only quiet respect. The same soldiers who once joked at his expense now paused mid-conversation to nod or salute him. He didn't expect it, and he didn't revel in it either. He just went back to work. Eli was now officially reinstated, technical advisor, field operations. His name appeared again on the military board, under a column labeled reactivated personnel. It wasn't fame he wanted. It was dignity. And dignity, he'd learned, was a harder victory than applause. General Vale sat at his desk one night, long after curfew. He replayed the footage from the convoy, the explosion, the chaos, the moment Eli stepped forward while everyone else took cover. He watched it again and again, trying to understand the look on the man's face. It wasn't pride. It wasn't anger. It was something quieter, a conviction that didn't need witnesses. Marlowe entered the tent. "Sir, you're still awake?" Vale shut the tablet. "You ever realize how easy it is to destroy a man with a single word?" Marlowe frowned. "Sir? Useless." He let the word hang, heavy and bitter. "I said it like a truth. Turns out it was just arrogance." Marlowe didn't know what to say, so he didn't. Vale leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Every man deserves the right to be seen for what he can do, not what he looks like. Eli returned to his quarters that same night. He reached into his duffel and pulled out an old envelope, yellowed and creased. Inside were two things: a faded blueprint and a termination letter. The blueprint bore his name in the corner, Daniels, lead design engineer. The letter beneath it stripped him of everything that followed. He ran a calloused thumb across the ink, eyes steady but tired. The world had taken much: his career, his recognition, his years. But not his craft. Not his soul. He folded the blueprint gently and set it aside, whispering under his breath, "Maybe now they'll remember who built the things they stand on." 2 months later, the Defense Engineering Council held a public review of the Langston convoy incident. Representatives from across the divisions attended, including General Vale and Eli Daniels himself. A senior board member read from the report. "It is noted that Mr. Daniels, despite being a civilian contractor, demonstrated decisive action under fire, directly preventing loss of life and equipment. The council recommends full reinstatement of prior honors. Another voice cut in, older, skeptical. But we removed him from the department 15 years ago for insubordination. Vale spoke, his voice cutting through the hall. No. You removed him for having the courage to speak against corruption. The room fell silent. Even Eli looked up. Vale continued, eyes burning with conviction. I led a convoy that was supposed to represent military efficiency. And it failed, until one man, stripped of his rank and reputation, fixed what none of us could. If that's insubordination, then maybe the system is broken, not the man. A murmur rippled through the council. The chairman cleared his throat. The motion stands. Mr. Daniels will be recognized with full reinstatement and an official commendation. Eli exhaled slowly. Not triumph. Just release. The ceremony was modest, as Eli requested. A hangar filled with sunlight through high glass windows. Rows of soldiers, engineers, and officers lined in quiet anticipation. General Vale stood at the podium, his voice steady but humble. There are two kinds of strength in this world. The kind that commands, and the kind that endures. Mr. Daniels showed us the latter. He turned to Eli. You reminded us that knowledge doesn't fade just because others choose to forget it. Applause filled the room as Vale pinned a silver badge onto Eli's jacket. The same rank he once lost. Now returned. When the clapping subsided, Eli spoke softly into the microphone. I never wanted revenge. I just wanted the truth to breathe again. Because the moment we stop believing in people's potential, we break more than machines, we break humanity. The hall stood silent for a long moment before applause rose again. Louder this time, fuller, sincere. News outlets picked up the story within hours. Fired engineer saves military convoy after 15 years of exile. The man they called useless becomes national hero. Headlines swirled, social feeds flooded with commentary. But Eli didn't grant interviews. He turned them all down. He spent his days back at the workshop, repairing old vehicles, mentoring young apprentices, especially those who had been told they'd never make it. When one of them asked why he never spoke on TV, Eli smiled faintly and said, because silence did the talking long before they started listening. One evening, as the sun dipped low, General Vale arrived at Eli's workshop. No cameras. No ceremony. He stood by the doorway, hat in hand. I came to say something I should have said long before anyone clapped for you. Eli didn't stop working. You already said it, General. On the stage. Vale shook his head. That was the soldier talking. This is the man. Eli glanced up. Vale stepped closer. You didn't just fix my convoy. You fixed something in me. I thought leadership meant being unquestioned. Turns out, it means being willing to learn. Eli's expression softened. We all break down sometimes. You just needed someone who knew how to fix the parts. For the first time, Vale smiled. A real one. Months later, the military unveiled a new facility, the Daniels Engineering Training Center. It was built not to glorify Eli, but to teach his principles, precision, humility, and belief in the unseen potential of every worker. A mural near the entrance depicted a man kneeling beside a broken truck, wrench in hand, not as a servant, but as a savior. Students passing by would stop to read the quote etched beneath it. Respect isn't earned through power. It's revealed through purpose. On a quiet morning, Eli packed his tools into his pickup. The new recruits waved as he left. He wasn't leaving in defeat this time, but in peace. The desert stretched before him, gold and endless. He drove with the window down, sunlight washing over the dashboard. A faint smile lingered on his face as a radio broadcast played in the background. And finally, in today's news, a former mechanic turned hero is being honored for his service to the nation. His story reminds us all that no skill, no man, and no act of integrity is ever truly small. Eli turned down the volume, leaned back, and whispered, "Guess they finally heard." The engine purred beneath him, steady, powerful, free. They mocked him, doubted him, called him useless. But when every system failed, when arrogance collapsed under its own weight, He was the only one who knew how to make it work again. Because respect isn't born in rank or wealth. It's forged in the silence of those who never stopped believing they mattered. If this story moved you, if you believe respect should never depend on rank, color, or uniform, hit that like button and subscribe for more true, cinematic stories exposing arrogance, injustice, and redemption. Tell us in the comments. Do you think the general truly learned his lesson, or was it only guilt after being proven wrong? Your thoughts might just inspire the next story.